everyone, and welcome to the first day of Vlogmas. I am honestly so excited to do Vlogmas this year. I could not sleep last night because I was so excited. I think I fell asleep at like 2 o'clock in the morning because I just kept thinking about like, oh my gosh, it's Vlogmas. I don't even know if I've like prepared enough or if I've like done everything that I need to do. And then I realized that I didn't even get an advent calendar, so we're not gonna have an advent calendar to open today, which is a little bit unfortunate, but that's okay because technically first day of Vlogmas isn't supposed to be like the first day of December, so advent calendar will have to be done tomorrow. So I am really excited to do my November wrap up for the first day of Vlogmas. I try to do these kind of videos during Vlogmas and including them within like the Vlogmas videos because it just makes sense that way. So I know this isn't technically like a vlog, but it is a video. And I figure for this month especially, it makes sense for it to kind of be a little bit vlog style, or at least done a little bit more casually, because I only read 4 books this month in November, which actually isn't that bad, but 3 out of the 4 books that I read are part of the same series, and 3 out of the 4 books I read are rereads. I only read 1 new book this month, and it was actually part of the series that I'm gonna talk about. And hey, it's my channel, I make up the rules. So jumping right in to the books that I read in November, I started off rereading the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. I had read the first 2 books a couple of months ago for the first time and absolutely loved them, devoured them. And I kind of kept going back and forth whether I wanted to reread them or not in anticipation of the 3rd book releasing. And I was like, you know, I literally spent like a week and a half waffling between like, yeah, I'm gonna reread them and no, I'm not gonna reread them. And then when I was on the plane at like late October coming back home from New York, I decided, okay, I'm just gonna like read the last book. I'm not gonna reread the other ones. It's not that big of a deal. I'll be fine. I realized very quickly, like within like the first 14 minutes, that I'm like, I think I need to reread this series. I know that I just read them a few months ago, but it needs to be done. For some reason, all of the plot points were so jumbled in my head that I could not keep them straight, especially in the first book. Like I was like, what happens in the first book? So I had to reread them, and I spent an entire week like in the beginning of November being like, I can't reread them. It's gonna be too much work. It's gonna be too hard, because I'm not typically a person that rereads books. I used to be back when I was like in elementary school and middle school, because my mom was like, I'm not buying you new books. Most of my books were hand-me-downs, but now that I'm older, I've really fallen out of practice of being able to reread books. So I was so nervous going into Once Upon a Broken Heart, and then I finally decided to pick it up one day and I zoomed through it like within a day. And I was like, why was I so scared of rereading this book? Why did I think it was gonna take so much out of me? It really didn't. I loved it so much, and I think I even loved it more the second time around. I can't even explain how much I love them. If you don't know what Once Upon a Broken Heart is about, it's kind of hard to explain it without delving into kind of like what Caraval is about by Stephanie Garber, because they're set within the same universe. And technically Once Upon a Broken Heart is like a spin-off series. I am kind of under the belief that you can read them independently if you would like to. If you have no desire to read Caraval, you think you will never read it ever, you know that for a fact, go ahead and read Once Upon a Broken Heart. That's totally fine. But I do believe that you need to read the Caraval trilogy before getting into the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. I think it's just, in my opinion, necessary if you want to get the full picture. But basically, Once Upon a Broken Heart is about Evangeline Fox, and she's in love with this boy who she thought was in love with her as well, but she finds out that he's actually going to marry her stepsister. Evangeline goes and tries to stop the wedding, but ends up making a deal with Jax. And Jax is considered the Prince of Hearts, and his kiss is deadly, and he is definitely sort of like a trickster fate and not to be trusted. And in exchange for his help, he asks for 3 kisses from her, and he gets to choose who she kisses, when she kisses, etc. And the story kind of just goes from there, and we find out more about Jax and more about his intentions with Evangeline and what he truly wants from her. And basically this entire series just kind of follows those two characters, which is really fun and exciting because the Caraval series technically follows like two sisters, Scarlett and Tella. And so it kind of switches off characters quite a lot in that series, but this one is very much just focused on Evangeline and Jax. And I love this first book. I mean, I love this entire series, and I've talked about it before. I love a whimsical fantasy. I feel like that is now like a drinking game for my channel. Drink every time I mention whimsical fantasy. I just love it. I think it's so much fun and it's so magical and just kind of sweeps you off your feet, and that's what I want when I go into a fantasy book. Of course, I can also enjoy a more action-packed or sort of darker fantasy, but for the most part, I mean, I think I really just enjoy a whimsical fantasy. It's so much fun. I tend to read them a lot faster and I'm a lot more engaged in them, and this series is definitely like the pinnacle of whimsical fantasy for me. I love it so much. I could say a million amazing things about it, but I have to say, I think the one thing that I love the most about this series is that the audiobooks are so freaking amazing. I read this entire series as audiobooks. I actually own the first book physically, and I have never cracked open the pages on that. I've literally only read them as audiobooks, and I think that they are fan-freaking-tastic. It completely immerses you. Like, you listen to the audiobook and you forget about the world around you. It's so much fun, and that's what I love about reading, and I think that that is so exemplary in this series. And then of course I read The Ballad of Never After. That is the second book. That was another reread for me, and I mean, I can't really talk too much about this one because it is a sequel, but I loved it. I thought it was fantastic, and like this book in particular, I think this is true for all of Stephanie Garber's books, but The Ballad of Never After in particular, I feel like things are constantly happening, and I think I said this in my review or something like that, but it's so jam-packed with like action and things that are happening. There's so many characters, there's so many plot points, it's so twisty and turny, especially in this book. I felt like, I remember the first time I read it, I could not predict what was going to happen next, and I think that that's a lot of fun. Yeah, I think that's just really the beauty of the second book. And then of course we get to A Curse for True Love, which is the book that just recently came out about a month ago, and wow. I feel like this book truly solidified this series as like a 3-for-3 stunner, like incredible books. Each one of them 5 stars, so good, a new favorite. It's already 3 o'clock in the afternoon and the sun is going down. So if the lighting changes, I'm so sorry. It's getting much softer. But I just loved the ending to the series. I thought it was so well done, and it was so unexpected too. It was so different than I thought it was going to be, and I think for some people that didn't really resonate well with them, but for me, I was just so invested and so hooked. And the ending made me cry, it made me sob. I had to listen to This Love, Taylor's version, over and over and over again towards the end of this book because I was just, that was like everything I was feeling. It was so beautiful, and I kind of realized after the end of this book that a lot of it can be tied to like 1989, so if you're a 1989 girly, you might really like this series. I think the only real critique I had for this book, and the one thing that I kind of felt was a little bit missing, was I wanted more Jax in this book. I felt like there was a distinct lack of Jax, and I would have liked to see him a lot more. But if you've read the series and you kind of know what happens in this third book, it makes sense why he's not there all that much. But I missed him a lot, so can't help it. So yeah, all 3 of those books got 5 out of 5 stars for me. I absolutely loved them. I would reread this series in a heartbeat. I thought it was so much fun. And if you have enjoyed the Caraval trilogy, or if you are interested in reading the Caraval trilogy, I highly suggest that you do, because I also love that trilogy. And then when you're done with that, go ahead and read Once Upon a Broken Heart, because I think it's actually a little bit better than Caraval. And the last book that I read this month was another reread, and that was Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is my favorite book in the Brown Sisters trilogy. I love it so much. I mean, I love all three books pretty much equally for the most part, but I think that Eve Brown's book just holds a very special place in my heart, mainly because of the autistic representation, which I absolutely love. And I think I love even more the second time around, because I kind of know a little bit more about myself at this point and a little bit more about autism, and so I feel like I can see myself even clearer this time around when reading this book. I love it. I love it so much. And this is another series that I think that everybody should read. It's so much fun. And this one is just so special. I don't know how to explain it. If you haven't read it, this one is about Eve Brown. She is the youngest sister in this little sister trio, and she is kind of the baby of the family. She is a little bit of kind of like a wandering soul. Like, she doesn't really stick with a singular job for very long. She doesn't really know what path she wants her life to take. She can kind of come off a little bit as naive or immature or not hardworking or not dedicated. And that's something that I can totally see a lot of myself in. Even though I'm not the youngest sibling, I am the eldest. So I always thought that I would relate more to Chloe because she's also the eldest, and her book is the first book. I really love that one. But I think I relate so much more to Eve. I think I'm actually kind of like a mix between Eve and Chloe a little bit. But I think because I see a lot of myself in Eve, and I also see a lot of myself in Jacob, who's like the love interest in this book, I think I like this book a lot more for that. But basically, after her last failed job endeavor, her parents kind of cut her off and are like, you need to get serious, you need to figure out what you're going to do with your life. And she is kind of like, okay, I'll show them, and she runs off. She actually goes to the Lake District, which I only realized this time around, and I'm like, wait, I just made that connection. And so I kept thinking about The Lakes by Taylor Swift. She has also written about the Lake District, so I think that's very fitting. And while she's there, she finds an inn, and they are holding interviews for a cook, and she, without any prior experience, is like, hey, I could totally do that. I'm gonna go and interview. And she walks right into the interview and meets Jacob and his friend, and Jacob owns the inn, and he immediately does not like her. Immediately finds things wrong with her and is kind of put off, but also a little bit attracted to her in a way. But he likes things to be very orderly. He wants things to be done like the right way, or at least his way, which I can totally relate to as well. I also get really annoyed when things aren't done in the way that I believe that they should be done. I've always been kind of called out, especially by my family, about my very rigid thinking when it comes to that. I can kind of feel him in that regard, but they immediately butt heads, and Eve ends up storming out of the interview. And once she gets to her car, Jacob kind of has a change of heart and goes out to the parking lot to talk to her, and ends up getting run over by her and breaking his wrist. So, and almost by default, she ends up having to become the cook and help him out in the inn, and sparks start to fly between them. I love Eve and Jacob so much. I think that they are so perfectly suited for each other. I love both of their characters. I can relate to both of them pretty equally for different reasons. In this book, Jacob has diagnosed autism, and Eve kind of ends up suspecting that she might also have autism by the end of the book. So I really liked that representation of like both someone who is diagnosed, especially much younger, and then someone who kind of finds out later on in life that they're autistic. I think that that's really fun to read about, and I just really love this book. I think it's so much fun. It's so, like, I don't know if like cozy is the correct word to use. I feel like there's another word that I'm trying to think of, but it's just like so warm and sweet and almost adorable in a way. I don't know, it's just such a sweet little book and I love it. I love the romance, I love the characters, I love the family dynamics. I really highly recommend this book. If you want to check out the series, I totally think that you should. This is a romance trilogy, so technically you're supposed to start off with Chloe's book. And also this one is another really great audiobook. So if you are looking for audiobooks, this is the perfect wrap-up for you because all 4 of these books can be read as an audiobook and I think are fantastically done. Alright, so that is my entire wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed it and I hope that this is a really good start to Vlogmas. I am so excited to do it this year. I'm hoping that I'm not gonna get sick, knock on wood. I feel like every single year that I've done Vlogmas, I've gotten sick in one way or another. So I'm really hoping that this year is the year that I can stay healthy the entire time. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this wrap up, and if you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All the links are down below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!